Hello everybody, it is Ebontis, and today I'm excited to talk to you all about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I actually got to go hands-on with the game a little while back, and I do want to thank Bethesda for covering my travel and lodging while I was out in LA. They also covered the transportation to and from the event. So I do want to thank Bethesda for the coverage of the travel, but in this video I want to talk to you about my time that actually I get to sit down and play the game. Hands-on, controller, me sitting in front of a giant TV. It was a pretty cool event. We got to, hotel was nice. It was the Conrad in Los Angeles. Look it up. It was nice hotel. But when we went to the venue, they had a cool little intro area set up. I'll probably put a picture or two here in the front because it looked kind of like an Indiana Jones office setup. Globe, bunch of books, very cool. Giant poster with me standing in front of it. We didn't get to record any of the gameplay ourselves. There was no capture for us. So the footage that you're going to see has been provided by Bethesda. It's kind of their B-roll, but it generally covers everything that I got to play. So what you're going to see is what I got hands-on with the same way. It's just in higher detail since it is just kind of native footage, which is nice. Before we got to play, we actually got a little presentation from the game director. This is coming from Machine Games, in case you're wondering who that might be. Machine Games has done more recently Wolfenstein: The New Order, The Old Blood, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, just to say a few, and they have done their fair share of shooters. I got a second with the game director, just kind of me and him for a second, and I asked him what was kind of the hardest thing about making the switch. Obviously a lot of shooters and everything, going over to more of an adventure game, and he said that they weren't making a shooter. That is so just deep within the kind of DNA of their studio. They had to develop new systems like the melee system, which you'll see in here, and the way the whip works, and more of an adventures and cinematics and stuff of that nature. So they just really had to do a lot of newer systems, and overall, my general review up front, at least I'll say, was pretty positive. If you're looking for an adventure game, if Indiana Jones and historic artifacts and 1930s and pyramids of Giza and history and all that stuff sounds kind of cool to you, I think this is going to be a really good adventure. So this is going to be my preview of my hands-on time with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. So let's jump in. So the first thing I want to point out is just the fidelity that they managed to pull off in the game. I'll show you guys a couple of these little opening clips, but just looking at Indy right here, this is Indiana Jones. The reflections on his glasses, the hair, it's Harrison Ford. Troy Baker is doing the voice for Harrison Ford. And I've heard enough of Troy Baker, especially listening to him on a podcast. I've heard his voice enough, I can occasionally pick it up. But I would say a lot of the time, he is kind of disappearing into Indiana Jones. And I think he does the personification of Indy very well. The other thing I do want to say is any of the cinematics that you do see, the voice acting, the facial animations, I think they did very, very well. I've had hit or miss different games in the past with facial animations. A lot of the voice work recently has been good, but the faces may not quite be there. I think this is a pretty high bar. I think they did pretty well. I don't know if it's going to be the best of the best, but I think this is definitely a very believable situation. So this intro section starts out with Indiana Jones, and we got to play two pieces, basically Indy and Marshall College, and then kind of going to the Vatican and Rome. A little early section, we got about 45 minutes there. And then we got about an hour and a half in the Egypt section, which I'll get to a bit later. But I'm just going to kind of cover some of the systems that you're going to see and my thoughts about each one of them as you go. But there's the fidelity, like his jacket, the materials. And that was one of the things we learned from the presentation was they did a lot of research to work on making it as authentic as possible to the time period, to Indiana Jones and everything. So you've got the sound effects, like the absolute iconic, like Indiana Jones punching sound is in there, but also just the world. So let me jump ahead and show you guys just a little clip of him walking through the museum, and you just kind of get to see the fidelity of the world, and I'll get you a look at Giza a bit later. Small thing I wanted to point out are the maps so far. Only got a few of them for the levels that I was in. I just appreciate them. Some games are going to have a map, some games don't, but when it comes to a game that has not openness, it's not an open world. I will tell you that. You're going to have levels. Some games have a little more that you want to explore. Some games have a little less to go hiding around. I think this is going to walk a decent line of open-ish levels outside of probably the intro areas. And having maps to be able to kind of look around, see where you are, give you a few pointers are going to go a long way. And the maps work pretty well. So when you pick it up and collect the map, you'll see that actually down at the bottom when he goes to look at it, you can see the arrow at the bottom showing your character's icon. And you can actually kind of see your objective up in front. So the maps were just appreciated. I know that's one of those random things to call out. It's just one of those nice nods because sometimes you're just going to be wandering around games with no map. Just FYI, they're in here. Now, this section that I'm going to let play here is within Marshall College, and you'll get a little bit more of a daytime view a bit later when I show you guys kind of like an early intro puzzle. But the idea here is I just want you to look and see like a college in the 1930s and a museum area where you can see where all these artifacts are stored, the lighting through the windows, the nighttime, any of the reflections. I just think the worlds that they built for the game, at least that I got to see so far, the three of them here at Marshall College, the Vatican area, and then especially in Giza, the worlds they built are really high detail. So if you just go off and looking and inspecting at things, you're going to just see a lot of cool stuff. So I wanted to give a shout out just to the worlds because they are really well made. So let me do a little quick preview so you can see this little area. I mean, just the detail on the corners of the structures. You can see all the little statues and everything up here. And just so much fidelity to so many of the little pieces. I don't want to go into any story spoilers, anything like that. I will leave all of that out of here. There's not much I can show you anyway. But we'll get to combat and stuff a bit later. Just really cool detail, and I'll show you guys more as we go. So after the altercation you go through, what's going to happen is you're going to wake up the next morning, and I think this has got to be the intro of the game, and you're looking around to try and figure out what was taken. And again, this is just kind of showing off the detail, the reflections in the windows. They're going to have full DLSS 3.5 ray tracing. Everything's going to be in here. So high GPUs on PC are going to have an amazing looking game, I have a feeling. And then you can see here, there's stuff kind of scattered on the floor, and this is like a very initial puzzle of picking up these kind of artifacts, figure out where they go, and if you don't put them in the right place, he will actually tell you. So this is an Egyptian artifact, so you can go put it here with the, kind of Egyptian art, and also if you know country flags, that'll probably steer you in the right direction. And this next one's going to be terracotta.
Terracotta, likely Babylonian out of Iraq.
And I think the voice work is just very well done. Marcus, they nailed his voice for sure as well. So the idea with puzzles, I'll show you a couple more glimpses with those. I don't think they're going to be crazy challenging, in my guess. Now, probably some of the later ones or a couple of the secrets are probably going to be a little interesting. But I don't think, like, a game like The Witness, this is not going to be a crazy level of challenging. I think they're going to be a supplement to the story. I think the ones that are definitely main path are going to be generally reasonable to figure out, so you're not just stuck on something too long, so you can continue to enjoy the game. And I think that's generally the idea on stuff like this, is they don't want some actual, like, head-scratcher. It's probably just going to take progression and other things to figure out. But you'll have some light puzzle solving to go through here, paired with combat and a cool story, is at least what I've seen so far.
So, is everything back?
Not quite.
Well, what's missing?
They Marcus's model, they just did so well. Like,
SW.
one of my favorites is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and that's just him.
What was that?
And just the voices very well, too.
He took the cat mummy, Marcus. But why?
But don't get me wrong, Indiana Jones, young Harrison Ford, absolutely crushed it as well. Troy Baker, probably couldn't pick anybody better for the voice, I will say that for sure. So at this point, you go into Indiana Jones' office, and when you're in here, you got a couple things that you can see. I'll let you guys just take a look. Suitcases on the right, you end up picking up the whip, and then we go for a bit of travel. But this is when I talk about the level of detail. It's all over the place in this game. His office, obviously, going to be kind of a shining point of, the couch kind of strewn over there, the stack of the books, the papers on the floor, but also the crates, the artifacts and things on the shelf on the left. On the right, you've got a whole bunch of stuff that you'll be able to see a little bit later. Just so much little things. So many little things in this game are in places that make it feel so well researched and such a well built world. I just want to give Machine Games a big shout out for that, because if you're looking for Indiana Jones, it is absolutely dripping Indiana Jones, between the voice work, the kind of humor and levity that you get at some points, the exploration and the world, the whip, the combat, which we'll get to here in a little bit. They really did a great job encapsulating Indiana Jones, in my opinion. So I'm sure there are some critics who will probably say it's not enough or whatever, but to me, I think they did a great job of capturing the essence of Indiana Jones. Speaking of Indiana Jones, this is like one clip I wanted to show you. When I say Screaming Indiana Jones, truly the red line on the map, a little bit of transparency as you go through. Again, just very Indiana Jones, and anybody who's seen any of these movies, you're going to be right in the wheelhouse of it. So this is a little bit more getting around the world. So you're going to be using your whip, so you can see the animation on the whip is solid, and you can see it jump to third person there. You've also got a bit of a stamina meter to watch out for. He's, you know, middle-aged professor kind of thing. He's not going to be the most spry guy in the world, but he's able to manage. I think the whip is something that is going to come in very useful once you kind of work on getting it into your arsenal. I didn't use it as much as I would like, but when I did use it, it felt better than I had thought. And that's kind of one of the things I do want to say. When I watched the early preview, my thoughts on the whip were questionable. I was like, something about the animation, I don't know if it's just the bad video render or the compression, felt weird. When I got to use it in-game, less of a thing. And you'll see it here as well, where you get to see a little bit more fidelity, the actual directionality where you can hit with the whip and stuff like that. My question, my skepticism with regards to the whip mostly subsided. I think overall when it comes to combat, I just have me personally wanting to get better at the combat to feel like I've mastered it, because I didn't feel like I got that in the time that I had. I was able to manage, but it was also, if you had multiple enemies, definitely able to, I got overrun and got my butt kicked a couple of times, but one-on-one fights I was able to manage. I'll really want to become a master of the combat in this game, just because I think personally it's got a lot of potential to be kind of a cool combination of systems between occasional weaponry, which you don't really get a lot of use in because you don't want to alert everybody, but the whip and the melee system, I think that's going to be a really cool combination. So at this point, we're kind of at the Vatican. We're working on trying to get through this area to our buddy, and I just kind of want to show you guys some of the systems that you've got in work here. So a couple bottles on the ground, you're going to do stealth and AI kind of distraction. You've probably seen it before. One thing I will say, the difficulty, I was just on kind of middle of the road difficulty. The AI was not the most alert in the world. It's not like you're playing Thief on expert difficulty or something along those lines. But the distractions worked, and I think the biggest thing about this game is Indy doesn't want to be guns blazing loud. So if you're reasonable about the stealth, you can manage quite a bit, and with your whip, you can kind of get guns out of people's hands or weapons out of the way and do a lot more than potentially you could in just full stealth. The whip gives you a little range without being loud that you might not normally have otherwise. So if we start, you'll see he was like, oh, there's something over there. Pick up the bottle, and again, I just think the animation work overall is excellent. From what I've seen, that's going to be a distraction. I kind of did that, but I didn't do the distraction the other direction like he does here. So you got a little bit of tilts and leans, so he throws another direction to kind of split the group. And you actually really get them divided. And I think once all the, like, a little bit of the AI polish, which is probably like the last thing they work on, and managing, but like the ray tracing, the lighting, that's going to be pretty. So he picked up a broom. This is one thing I do want to specifically talk about here, and I'll show you a couple other clips of combat and stuff like that. On the bottom right, you're going to see these three little pips. Everything you pick up, whether it's a sledgehammer that might have 5, a kind of wooden baton that might have 3, the broom that has 3, most weapons are going to be pretty fragile, and some be a little bit stronger, but, you know, 1 to 2 enemies, and they're going to likely break. A lot of stuff breaks kind of on one enemy, so you'll be breaking stuff over somebody's face. You knock them out, but then you got to go find something else, or you got to go into melee pretty quickly. So it's kind of that dependency on what's around you, what's available, what you can use, and also how good the melee is depending on how much you need. So for this example, you can see him pick up the broom, come behind him, mostly going to hit him with the broom staff. So, and that's another thing too I did want to point out, is just that ability to engage. There's another one with an umbrella with a hook, kind of hooks him in the groin area, definitely incapacitates him for a second. Another one, you just straight up smack him across the face. And then again, the broom's broken, so can't really use that anymore. You can see he's got a rake there that he could pick up. And same thing, he's potentially going to see you, so you're like, okay, come back. And you can go for another distraction, which is what he does. But generally in all of these areas, if you play a little on the cautious side, and especially when it comes to getting around the areas, so if you take a further area in the Giza area, there was kind of a barracks that I needed to get into. I tried to work my way through the front and kind of got there, but eventually I set off a few too many and lost. I ended up just taking like a side route, so much easier to get in. Truly, like, not even that difficult per se, because I just went in I almost dodged all the enemies. So a little exploration, a little searching to figure out like alternate routes into, you know, specific locations are probably what's going to pay off pretty well. So it is It's not a linear game most of the time, from what I can tell you. It's going to have a little more openness to it as soon as you get out of these first kind of intro areas. So when you do jump into the game, these first two spots are probably going to be a little more, you know, point A to B, point B, mostly straightforward. When you get to the open venues, you're going to have a lot more freedom to kind of approach things in multiple different ways, which I appreciate. So in this section right here, this is another thing for combat. You can see I have kind of like an old crowbar, 3 pips, but again, if you go for the finishers, seems like the kill that you're able to take him out, but it breaks the weapon. There are ways to upgrade this. So we'll jump ahead once I show you guys this one, just kind of a cool animation. Because you can actually see it just basically break on his head. He falls over. Now, what you'll notice here is you have a couple of options. This is the same thing I was trying to kind of discuss before. You can go straight. You can follow the patrol. You can run up on the guy standing there, take him out, take the other guy out if you wait on the patrol. Or what he does, and what I did a reverse route, you can go left over here on this box, and you can actually go up, use your whip, climb up, go across the top area, and you can avoid. So there are going to be multiple pathways in these somewhat linear areas, but even more openness when you get to the bigger spaces. So this is just one little spot I wanted to show you. All right, so this section coming up is probably one of the little better pieces of combat. So honestly, I just want to play through it and give you a little talk over as it goes, because between the whip on the hand, you'll see him drop their weapon. He picks up the baton, smacks him across the face. Then he's going to throw the baton to kind of get a little distraction, destabilize the enemy, kind of run up on him, get a few punches in. You'll see the enemy actually dodge on the first one, like truly avoid, you know, kind of like bob and weave from the baton. Then he'll take the baton to the face. This just gives you an idea of how the melee system is going to work. And I think this is where mastering this system is actually going to be hopefully a lot of fun. And as I was getting, you know, kind of a grasp for it, I feel like there's going to be a lot of fun to have in the combat overall, just in the game from start to finish. So I'm just going to let this one go short. It'll be one of my longer clips to show, but here we go. It goes pretty quick. So you got one down the stairs, bird flies away. So I'm able to knock the baton out. You can see he can pick it up, fully dodges it. You can see I kind of knock him with the baton in his hand. A lot of like body parts react depending on where you hit them. And then he sees coming up. I'm going to go for the lob of the baton on him, run on up, make him drop that. The iconic, of course, Indiana Jones punch, and he's down. And that's just a little piece of the combat so you guys can see. As you're working through the game, mastering that, you can see I've got a little bit more stamina than I started. You'll be able to upgrade your health bar. Those types of things go through progression. So that's another thing I want to talk about, is kind of your progression, because it's not an RPG, but it's an adventure, and you're going to have some stuff that you level up. All right, so here he's going to pick up a book. Now, this is Lucky Hat, and you've got a lot of different skills, different levels of skills after being knocked out, and you can pick up his fedora one more time, give you a second chance in a fight. So it's kind of like a second life opportunity. So what you're going to do is you're going to collect the book. Then, as you go through and find things in the world, whole bunch of different stuff, you're going to notice on the right, it's going to say 30 points available for survival. Again, you've got adventure points 30 available. Doesn't really matter. Those are just the different categories. So Punch Out was one he picked up earlier. So now if you go and actually select it, and you can see here, we've got it available, restore stamina when an enemy is knocked out. And as I told you guys, stamina is going to be one of those things you do have to manage. Like your stamina system from climbing, from combat, you're going to need to find a way to manage it, and getting more of it's going to be better. So getting it back in the middle of a fight, potentially against 2 enemies, could be big. So go through, spend your adventure points, and those adventure points you find from anything, like picking up his ID, like taking a photo of a specific location. All of these are going to be the things where you get a little bit of progression. So your exploration in the world is going to be rewarded through these points. And then when you find books, that's where you can spin those on to kind of make your Indiana Jones a bit more potent than he was than when you start the game. And by the time you get to the end, you're going to be stronger by a fair margin than probably where you start. So unlock the ability, and you're good to go. So, yep. Pretty cool view in Vista up here. You eventually go sliding down here, go meet your buddy. There's a little bit of combat, but I want to jump forward since this is already going to be a long video in the first place. I want to show you a little bit of Giza, just a little bit of the pyramids and the looks and the camera, so you guys can see just a little bit more. So this opening section with the pyramids is gorgeous. Like, again, I told you guys, the worlds they built are cool. The Sphinx will be over here on the right, the 3 pyramids, the scale and the size, and this is your camera. Now, you notice it says the Giza Vista. It'll actually put a label on it, and you also see the little 4 tick marks on the compass, north, south, east, and west. That basically means you've got what you're looking for in focus. And when you do that, you'll get a little voice line.
It is
You'll get some adventure points when you typically do that. And again, the world that they made here, every level, I think, is going to have this type of detail. And it just has this feeling of being 1930s in Egypt or wherever they're located. And you've got the storyteller sitting around with the youngins telling stories as an elder. And many things you can take pictures of will allow you to get these little bits of history and lore about the world around you. So again, if you're a history buff or anything like that, the amount of research they put into this game is absolutely massive. Another thing I wanted to pause and stop on the left is you'll see you've kind of got an alert. So that's one thing to be aware of. But you'll also notice that my health bar has got 4 ticks and then also a yellow one. There's certain things that you'll find around the world will be at food. Different food and things you find will be either extra health or extra stamina, but there was also like a thing that I found that I could eat as a collectible. So I think the more you search around, you'll find enough of those, be able to do something with that as well. But every little thing in these worlds are just really high detailed, and I was impressed the whole way through. Again, the high level systems, you're going to have a really gorgeous time. Again, here's the Sphinx. Again, in my head, the Sphinx is a lot bigger, but this is actually probably the real size of it. In comparison to the pyramids, it's quite small actually. But again, like the train, the animation work, just the world around you is very, very well created to feel just full vibes the whole time. And the Ood Master.
Just as good with you as Sal's uncle.
So this is kind of the last thing I want to show you guys, because you've seen combat. This is going to be a bit of a piece of a puzzle. Now, you can't do everything with the puzzle in this current state of the game where he's at. You're going to have to probably travel around the area a little bit more. But this is probably an idea of a puzzle that you'll be looking at. So if you see here, basically, the bottom symbol that the light is shining on, you see you've got a diamond shape with a dot in the middle. So if you look over on this side right here where I'm kind of circling with my mouse, right side of the symbols, one in the middle, you've got a diamond with a circle, and then you got these little 4 V's around it. So that's part of it. Then if we take the actual tic-tac-toe pattern, that's going to be this one right here. And then you've got these 4 arches, kind of like little V's in each corner. That's going to be this one over here. So if you spin around a little bit and I jump forward, you're going to see that you've got potentially 3 mirrors that you would use. Now, there's doors on each side, or rubble or something, so you probably need a progressor in the area, get light from other parts of this level into here to be able to activate and use those mirrors. And then you're probably going to have to line up the 3 and kind of interact with each symbol as a time. This is probably an idea of how the puzzle would go. So part of it is going to be just progression through the level base. You'll have to unlock all the sides of this room so you can get the light into it, but then also probably have to move a little around so you can get light into the room, and then put it all together to figure out your symbol combination. So I said, not like brain-breaking puzzles, but a little combination of level and world and environmental, and I think there'll probably be a reasonable kind of pacing experience between combat, story cinematics, and then also the puzzles to kind of get you through each of the kind of progression checkpoints that you've got. So this part with the whip is one of those things I want to show you guys, because in here, this is one of those things that I think a couple of us had an issue with. The momentum you need with your swing while you're on your whip, it was a little more than I thought I needed. In the first like time or two I did that, I fell on the spikes. And then the third time I was like, okay, I really need to get the momentum in. And then I was able to actually make it work. But overall, just using your whip to get around, going to third person, and then most things still being in first person, I think the transitions are done extremely well, and it never threw me off that much. So the first to third person, I know that was a worry for some. I think they handled it very well, and this is kind of one of the early things that you've got to do is find a few of these tablets that you've got. This is actually a cool combat sequence where you can actually see that you whip him, kind of stun him.
Wrong way, chum.
And then you're able to grab him and then just punch him a few times and get the knockout in.
Guy packed a punch.
And you got some big bruiser guys. These are going to be a little beefier. You're going to see kind of he definitely takes a chunk out of Indy at one point. And that's the stuff that I'm talking about right there. Just the big block and then throwing an elbow on the bruiser. That's where I think like the dynamics of this melee combat, I think is going to be a lot of fun. And I know I've harped on the combat a lot, but I think this is a question for a lot of people. I think the story and the voice work is going to be really well done. I really do. I think just general animations, the characters you work with, and I don't know what story is going to be told, but I think it's going to be told well between good voice work and a cool like location and
See
everything.
what I can do about that, Professor.
But if you're looking at that, that is a young Harrison Ford sitting in Egypt. The background behind him is awesome. And personally, for me, I had some skepticism going into my preview, so I was actually really happy that I got to go play this. And I'm looking forward to the adventure. Now, I don't know how, like, earth-shattering or groundbreaking the adventure is going to be. That I will only tell you when it comes time for a review, because for me, that's just something I won't know until I get to play it start to finish. How do the story sequences play out? Is it, you know, a cool story? Is there any emotional beats to it? All of that type of stuff, won't really know. But if you're looking for Indiana Jones, in any way, this is obviously just dripping Indiana Jones. But if you're just looking for a fun, swashbuckling's the wrong word, but, you know, Indiana Jones is kind of the archaeologist of the swashbucklers. He's got his whip. He's got his fedora. He's going to get in some punch outs, and the times that you're going to use guns is probably one of the things I'm most curious about. I don't know if you're really going to get into any major firefights because you do not want to alert half of the camp that's around you. I did that a couple times to test it, and it pretty much always went poorly. So for me, it's mostly the fact that when you're doing certain things, the fact that you can push a guy off a ledge. So this for example is funny because you give him a shove.
All right, pal, you asked for it.
There were some guys that really enjoyed just finding a guy on a ledge and pushing him off of it. That was actually pretty funny to watch. And I just think the world that you're going to be able to interact with for all of the puzzles and everything that you've got, they've done an excellent job. And just these worlds that you get to look in, it looks like you're inside a pyramid, sand on the ground, dark, hieroglyphics on the wall. Take the photo, get your hidden chamber, like detailed information. That's going to go in your little book that you've got, using the camera to find all your puzzles. And you've got a lighter, which you'll get pretty early on.
I found it.
And then just the overall voice work of Indy. I mean, I just think overall, they've done an excellent job from my early hands-on. I don't have a complete picture. I don't have a complete score of anything yet. One other thing I want to mention. You notice the bottom left-hand corner? I've got a bit of a different outfit on. You're going to have disguises that you can find, and those are going to allow you to get to areas that are generally not accessible or not going to be accessible to you in a normal outfit without alerting people. So you'll have different disguises. You can pick up and move bodies. So between the stealth sections that you're going to really need to be quiet on, then you've got melee combat where you're bruising it up. You've got a cool cinematic story that's going to be told in environments and worlds that I think are very well put together. I am very optimistic on this one. Obviously, I said this is not a full review, but my preview, I went in with some skepticism, and I think while I want to get my hands on the full game to get an overall feel for it, I think right now I am pretty optimistic on this one, and I'm looking forward to it in December. So if you enjoyed the preview, drop a like below, subscribe to the channel. I cover a lot of different games, but I'll definitely be reviewing this one when it comes to December and its launch, whether it's at, you know, review embargo or later. I'm still going to play through this one since I've already played part of it. And I hope to see you guys hanging out here in the future. If you enjoy my content, though, drop a like, subscribe, find me on Twitch or Twitter. Thank you all very much, and I'll see you soon.